Hello and welcome back to Playtime with Rufus, a spiritual and metaphysical podcast unlike any other. I'm Mario Radinger and I'm really glad you've joined us again. In this second episode, we move into the real beginning of our work with Rufus. If the first session served as preparation and alignment, this one opens the door to the deeper questions. We begin by exploring the original purpose of human incarnation on Earth. What was the vision for this so-called playtime before the distortions began? Why is forgetting who we truly are such an integral part of this experience? And is remembering that truth part of the plan or somehow outside of it? As you'll hear, Rufus shares insights that are at once simple and cosmic and offers a perspective on human life that includes the body, the senses, the environment, and our free will, all as pieces of a vast and beautiful design. We also talk about the veil of forgetting, what makes the Earthian playtime so unique, and why it draws so many souls to it, even with all its challenges. Later in the conversation, we explore the idea of outside influences, the concept of service to self versus service to others, and we also get introduced to a mysterious third party, Neutrality. If you're familiar with the Law of One, you'll hear some deep resonance with its teachings, as well as some new perspectives from Rufus that might shift how you've understood them until now. As always, take what resonates and feel free to leave the rest behind. You'll probably find that this session raises just as many questions as it answers. That's how it was for me, at least. And that's exactly the point. We're here to remember, to explore, and to learn how to live more consciously together. So get comfortable, open your heart, and enjoy. And remember, this is Playtime with Rufus, where higher wisdom meets human curiosity. I now ask Rufus to join us here and support us today by integrating yourself into Emily's body now.
Yes, here we are.
Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Mario.
And it's lovely to speak to you again.
Yes, it is indeed.
And while I give you a bit more time to integrate yourself into the body, so the flow of energy, of communication, of information can be as best as possible, I would like to express my joy that Emily and I have found the time to continue with the project we have started with you together.
Yes, we are glad that you guys can make this time for it to be happening.
Is there anything we can do to make Emily more comfortable or to increase the quality of the connection?
It should be all right this way.
All right. Before we dive into the material, is there anything you would like to say or share with us or mention?
Not really, except that we are pleased to be here having this discussion with you.
Very good. I would like to give you the opportunity to give Emily a personal message regarding her personal life. Would now be a good opportunity or rather at the end of today's working?
Really doesn't matter. Before or after, it will be the same to us.
Okay. Now, let's do this now.
There it is. Everything that she has been struggling with will resolve in due time. It will be just a matter of patience, which she clearly had issue with. But we can grant her what she is yearning for in due time.
Your message is complete?
Probably.
All right. Thank you for that. And let's now continue with our project. Or
Yeah.
I should rather say begin with the project, because last session was mostly serving preparation and aligning with our intentions. And as you have asked me to do, I went through the material of last session, and there were two things that stood out to me in
Yeah,
regard to the project. You mentioned that the vision of a human is distorted at this time,
clearly.
and that the playtime we are in has been endured by so many of us instead of fully be played.
Clearly.
And so there are three questions that came up that might serve as a basic structure to this material, or at least to maybe today's session. The first
Yeah.
question would be, what was the original vision? The second question, what led to the distortion of that original vision? And the third question would be, how can we realign with the original vision so we can move from enduring to playing again? How do you feel about this?
Well, we feel pretty good. Those are a decent question that we can probably satisfy with our answer. Let's take the first one. Would you mind asking the first question again so
Mhm.
we can actually answer it properly and perhaps detail our answer regarding the question itself
What was the original vision
for your playtime
for human existence?
for the human existence? Very well. Well, the original purpose of it, we believe, was to experience through firsthand experience. This might not be as clear as we intended it to be. Basically, humans can actually experience in a way that we, without a body, cannot. Humans beneficiate from different senses that we will not beneficiate from being outside an envelope, if that makes sense. So the first intention was to experience through different senses. For example, smell, taste, touch. Let's not put a vision because we have a way to visualize and see completely different than humans' way, but
Mhm.
we can actually use that sense. But the smell, taste, touch is something quite different. On top of it, humans were supposed to be placed in a surrounding that could be completely different in regard of where they decided to embody on Earth. This surrounding will come with different experience per se, because it will be experienced. Sorry, we are searching for another words in her vocabulary, but it is not coming yet. So let's continue with experience word if it's okay with you.
Yes.
The different surrounding that humans will choose to come in this playtime will provide different sets of experience, different feelings, different sensation. Let's say if you were placed in an environment that will be very hot and dry without a lot of vegetation, or to the contrary, if you were placed in an environment that will be quite cold or quite furnished on vegetation with a moderate kind of heat, you would build different experience that would lead to build different sets of skills and knowledge. And you will this way beneficiate from different tools, whether it's actual tools or whether it's something you build that is more abstract. but that is still a tool. So basically, the purpose of it was to place some souls in different environments inside the body in order for them to experience not only the body, but the experience of the environment that would be associated with the body in different places. So the experience could multiply and be completely different from one another. On top of that, you would add the perception of feelings, perception of the heart that would receive those experiences and translate them in a way that would be proper to each human because of the ability to experience in the way they desire to experience. So let's say the experience itself is already different inputs, if we can say. The one that we would choose to experience, but not being inside the body yet. And then the one that we will, in fact, experience being inside the body, as we do have freedom of choice once we are inside the experience, inside the playtime. So the main purpose of humans was clearly to just experience in a way that we cannot outside of the body, and also freely, meaning we would cut part of ourselves from the humans or pretend that we cut part of ourselves so humans would not remember some of the stuff that usually is known of the soul that is inside the body. In this way, the experience will be more complete because it will be like almost completely new. So they will have this experience as humans, thinking this is the only experience that they are having, when in fact, they planned ahead on having this human experience from another perspective when they were not humans. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
So basically, we believe that the initial purpose was simply to experience from a different perspective that we can have on the other end. Let's say when we are not inside the body, the experience is completely different. When we are inside the body, and in this case, a human body, we can experience through this body. So the experience become completely different. It has its limitation, but it also has some abilities that we do not have on our hand. Does that make sense to you?
Can you repeat the last sentence?
Yeah. The human body will have some ability that we do not have on our hand. And this is probably most seen through the senses that we expressed before, as we are not able to understand clearly without having a human experience or a body experience what senses can really be in terms of smell, taste, and touch. So the whole playtime, like any other playtime, was actually designed to be a way of experiencing self differently and see what would come out of this experience if we were somehow pretending to be cut from this part of ourself and make them believe that this experience was the entire, let's say, we are having a hard time phrasing with the vocabulary she's knowing. Let's say it will be quite difficult for a human to remember exactly what they are in order to be more challenging, but more fulfilling to play this experience completely. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the intention here was yet another way to experience self, through a different lens, if we may use that term. It was a way to discover other possibilities of being through a different lens, which in this case would be the human body and all its attributes. But clearly, some of the stuff that are felt and that are experienced as a human body, we would not be prepared for, or we would not be able to see fully coming, as we don't have the desire and the intelligence of the body itself and the surroundings, the information it will grasp from the surroundings and apply to its experience in this playtime. So if the intention was for the humans to just experience self differently, the fact that freedom of choice exists in that playtime and that this human body is able to choose how it wants to play is out of our hand. In that sense, it builds an entire new perspective that will bring completely unnoticed or acted behavior and experiences, because also it's been decided and chosen that we will add some freedom somehow that would not be directed or that would not be interfered with, if that makes sense. So the first intention was really just have an experience that we could not have without the body. And not only without the body, but an experience that we could not have without the environment itself. And just see what would happen and what could be lived and recorded and brought back to us, so we can enlarge our spectrum or evolve somehow by having new knowledge and new understanding of way of being. It is very difficult to formulate in words, but the goal of all those experiences basically to know self a little more, to bring back some different level of it and to digest and integrate this level in order to keep elevating and keep on extending our spectrum of existence, if that makes sense.
Does.
Does that answer fully your first question, or should we go again?
I think it's a wonderful start. Already, there are so many questions that come up in my mind
Good.
that I would like you to talk about. And I feel like this will be, obviously, we can't answer them all probably. So I have to choose very wisely. First of all, you talked about the cut off, being cut off from you, so to speak.
Yes.
Is this, let's call it a forgetting, unique to our playtime? Is this the aspect that makes our playtime
Oh, yes.
unique?
Yes, it is clearly the one main aspect that makes the Earthian playtime so amazing to watch and observe, and probably less amazing to endure. Imagine it's almost like when you're a kid and you're playing with toys or whatever, and you fully believe that those toys are alive. It's almost like if you're forgetting that you're even a kid and you only identified with a toy. Could you imagine what it is like? Because this is clearly what a human is experiencing. The goal is to identify fully with the body and with the experience, to the point that they even forget where they come from and that they are actually playing, role play, or however you want to call it. But there is someone or something on the other end that is actually playing this game. This game doesn't exist on its own, but for the time being, the human believe it does exist on its own. Unless it's already awakened, if you can use that term, to remember a little part of it that would actually kind of let him believe maybe we are somehow bigger than what we are playing right now. But the intention was clearly to make you guys forget that you are coming from another dimension than this one, and that you are just having fun playing this game. So yes, it is a unique quality of the Earthian playtime, and it is actually what we like. And we are so pleased with the ones that actually build that playtime, that they thought about this. This is very exciting because it put the game in a complete new dimension. It's almost like there is full freedom of playing it. Do you understand?
Yes.
Yes. So very, very unique to European playtime.
Thank you for that.
This is
In
also why so many of us would love to come and try, because it's challenging somehow and it looks very appealing, very exciting, that we could actually forget what we are or where we are, where we came from, what it's our own new word is bring back to us in that playtime. It's like basically an opportunity that is very scary, but very exciting at the same time, because it's almost like somebody's offering you, okay, Mario, tomorrow we are proposing something that you could completely forget that you are Mario, and you can identify it as a toy and play the life of this toy. And this toy will be the one choosing what he would like to do on an everyday basis. But you, as a toy, will not remember that Mario exists. How would you like to do that? Part of you will be probably, yes, that's exciting. Part of you will be probably like, yes, that's a little bit scary that I don't remember. I don't want to go through amnesia.
right.
But for the ones that are looking for new experiences, new challenges, for the ones that are a little bored with our vastness, this is very exciting.
I see. Considering what you just explained, is the remembering actually a desired aspect of this playtime? If so much effort has been put into the forgetting aspect, how do you feel about us or some of us remembering?
Well, this is actually a delight because, okay, let's say we design a play where you forget completely that you're even playing something and you're identified fully with the actual role that you've been taken on. But somehow, still, this link exists. It is not because you've been programmed to forget that the connection isn't there, that the one playing this playtime isn't real or doesn't exist. So the link, the connection, even if it has been designed to be forgotten, still exists. So this is where it becomes very interesting, because the essence, the energy of the soul that is playing this playtime somehow knows that it is a soul, that it is connected, and that it is bigger in this playtime in this human body. But because it has, let's say, a veil of forgetting, but inside it knows what exists. It's just a matter of, will the veil, will the program, will the forgetfulness that comes with this playtime be stronger than the knowledge of existing in a bigger sense? Which one will be winning, if we can use that term? And this will clearly depend on the surrounding, on the experience, on a lot of other aspects of this playtime. So it is quite interesting to see what will weigh strongly in the balance, in the scale. What will be stronger? Is it the actual experience, the veil, or is it the inner knowledge? And it's also very interesting in our end to see how the surrounding and how the connection between multiple players can move from one way or another and outweight in the scale. For example, if a player is completely living in this veil of forgetfulness, completely absorbed by its role in the experience as a human, but encounter another player that somehow feels that the knowledge of another existence inside of that player cannot be denied, then the interaction between the two will be very interesting and could either go one way or the other, depending on how they can, let's say, influence each other. So you see, this has a very complex action between the human itself and the connection with the other humans, and also the connection with the environment as well. Because the knowledge of existing as one is all over a playtime. It is written all over. You could see it if you really pay attention. So the knowledge of existing on a bigger scale can be found in so many codes and in so many things in your playtime. But because of this veil of forgetfulness being constructed and being intended to be so efficient, this is where the battle begins, if we can use that term, the inner battle. Are you going to be convinced by the experience? And are you going to decide that you only exist as the one playing this experience? Or are you going to listen to your inner knowledge? Are you going to pay attention to all the signs that have been encoded in this playtime, that have been put all over to help you see that this is just a playtime? And this is where it becomes very interesting to watch, because depending on the period we're in, one has been outweighing the other. At some period of time, the experience was clearly outweighing the inner knowledge. But at some other time, the inner knowledge has been outweighing the experience. And it's very interesting to see what's happening on this level.
I was wondering if there's a preference when it comes to the participating souls.
We would say for us, not really. Both have interests. And it is also very interesting to go from one to another. But we believe that it's clearly easier as a human being playing that playtime to know there is something bigger. It would make, let's say, one of the biggest moments of a human life, which is what you call death. it will make that moment probably easier to play if the human had the inner knowledge that there is something bigger and that its existence doesn't end with this playtime ending. So we would say it could have some positive impact to remember, but it also could have some positive impact to fully dive in this playtime, embodying the human side and everything that is linked to the experience itself. Just because it means that somehow you accepted to fully play the role and fully play this experience. And what you would bring back with you will be completely from this experience, from the way of feeling, the way of experiencing through your senses, the way of experiencing through your human lens, which will have benefits from this whole playtime at the moment you will reach us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's say for us, you see, it could be better for a human to fully play through the human lens. But for us as a human, it will probably be better to play it halfway. Does that make sense?
It does. At this time of our playtime, we receive a lot of messages from the non-physical that the remembering, the becoming aware of the vastness, of
Yeah.
the connectedness is somehow desired or sought after or advised, which gives us the impression that this would be best for everyone.
Yes, at this time, it is definitely necessary just because you remember we were talking about the fact that when you fully experience as a human, you come with freedom of choice. And therefore, we cannot interfere in what will happen in your experience. But because everybody is connected in this playtime, when all the experiences start affecting each other in a way that is out of control, let's say, or in a way that is making most of the experience non-pleasant, then it is not really the best interest to tire the experiencer, to make the experiencer feel really bad or defeated or deflated or just not in a position to they can even keep on playing. So when this is reaching this point, then it is good and probably necessary to remind everybody that this is just a game. This is not anything else. It's just a game. So when the gamer cannot handle the game that they chose to play, then that's where it is becoming necessary to open the channel and open the access to remember there is more, just because it could put every player at ease and the game can keep on playing this way. Because at one point, if all your players are so tired and so hurt and in the state of mind that they cannot even continue playing and they cannot even experience anymore, then what is the point? You see? So sometimes the human playtime, the human experience, and this is not the first time. It has been reached before. So sometimes when it reached the point that the experience is becoming so heavy that the players cannot navigate through it anymore, that they cannot get out of it what is sought from, what is wanted, what is actually designed to get, then it is time to open the candle just to send a little message saying, hey, there is more. This is just a playtime. Please keep enjoying it. please keep playing it. But don't worry, there's more. So sometimes it is needed, but some other time it is not, because the experience is just lived with such a good energy, with such a good way of living it, that is not distracting the experience itself, it's not destroying the experience itself, that we can just leave the candle closed and shut. When you see from our end that the entire design is imploding, we can say that, is imploding, then maybe it's necessary to blow the whistle and say, hey, there is more. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned earlier that the environment we find ourselves in here plays a big part when it comes to the experience we have. And this environment obviously includes plants and animals and metals and earth and all of this, the
Yeah.
natural world. From what you have explained so far, I would get the impression, as someone who might not have heard more about this, that the non-physical being jumps into the human experience to do all the things you talked about. I have heard, however, that there is a certain chronological order of experience on this planet. Especially my teacher, Dolores Cannon, she talked about how a soul would first go through the mineral experience, for example, and then become a plant and then an animal and then a human being. Can you help put this into perspective and how you see it from your position?
We could say this is true for some and untrue for others. Let's remember, I think we mentioned it in some of your sessions. Soul can be created from different energy that has different frequency, different level of frequency, right? So you will have some soul that will be created with a higher frequency energy, some soul that will be created with a lower frequency energy. And then the goal is to keep on raising this frequency through experience, let's say. So some of the souls will definitely, if they choose to come experience the earthian playtime because of their level of frequency or their level of ability to experience, be limited in their human experience or earthian experience, and they will come for different level of play, if we can say. It's almost like a video game. There's different levels. So let's say
Mhm.
if some soul would like to experience Earth, but will have a frequency that if they will jump into a human body directly, will be completely out of purpose. It would completely defeat the purpose of experiencing. It will be very unpleasant, or they will not be ready to actually leave through that player. Then they would come and embody a different sort of player, which could be a tree, which could be a mineral, like you say, which could be just a natural element, just something that is living, but with a body that is not a human body. That makes sense.
Mhm.
It could be a flower. It could be anything, like a bug. It could be an animal. It could be anything that is alive but doesn't have a human body.
Right.
Just because the complexity of a human body is on a different level. It's clearly on a different level. So, in order to not discourage this soul that would like to experience through Earthian playtime, then we would definitely recommend this soul to choose a player, if we can say, or to choose to embody something that would match that soul and that would allow to learn little by little and not to get a big splash right away and be completely discouraged to come play again. And it will be so big of a splash that it would not even be able to take anything with them. It would defeat the purpose. So in that sense, some soul definitely can embody Earthian playtimes on different body. And then, once they are done with this one, then they're raising the frequency and they can come and embody another one again and again and again until they reach the human body if they keep on wanting to come experience this playtime. So, in that sense, we clearly agree with your teacher that this could be an evolution in incarnation because the soul would need to elevate and be able to bring back some stuff from this experience unless there is no point of experiencing at all if nothing can be brought back, right?
Right.
But for some other souls, it doesn't matter because some other souls are actually made of an energy that is already on a higher level that would choose to come maybe for the first time on earth, maybe to help, or maybe to just experience, or maybe to come in and, uh, how would you say, be a pillar for some other, or be a trigger for some other to be able to fulfill their own experience. So those soul could completely come right away from soul to human body because their energy will be already evolved on the soul level that they could normally play correctly the part of a human. But sometimes these kind of souls who believe they can actually handle the human body found themselves in the positions that they are completely absorbed by this playtime and it becomes completely out of hand. But regarding your question, we would say yes, your teacher is absolutely right in one end, and no, this could be also untrue for some other souls.
Hey, thank you so much for clarifying.
Mhm.
May I share an observation that the tone of your voice or Emily's voice has changed back and forth in
Yeah.
the last minutes? Can you explain why? What is expressed in this?
But yes, we could completely explain. We mentioned to you before, we're a collective, right? So we can find ourselves as one, but plural. And some of us need to connect through a body a certain way. And it will give you, let's say, for this part of the eye that I am right now, it will give you this use of the vocal cords that would sound kind of like what you call robotic, kind of, or with a not really clear tone in her voice. And some other part of I would use the vocal cord a different way just because it is easier. There is nothing much more into this. It's like we are used, some of us, to use the human body in order to speak, write, or even move sometimes. So we know how to do it, and we have a preferred way to enter it and act with it. And some other, we clearly are new to this and we are unsure on how to use the part of the body to be useful and connect with you. So we are trying our best, and sometimes it's a little clumsy. But yes, basically, it would just give you an insight on which part of I is speaking to you.
Right. Would the picture fit of a group on stage and the microphone is being given to different members of the group?
Yes, exactly. That would be exactly this. Let's say some of us will like to jump on and converse with you on certain aspect of the conversation better than others. So we would just share basically, even if it will be exactly the same source of knowledge,
Mhm.
it would be delivered by a different part of the same, if that makes sense.
Right. Yes, it does. Thank you. And
Mhm.
a second observation, um, there seemed to have been activity in Emily's hands or fingers very close to her sacral chakra. Can you explain why that took place?
Yes. Well, she put her hands on her sacral to start the session with. So this was not intended to us to do any activity on her sacral, but sometimes the way we use the body, the way our energy will flow through her body will activate some of the muscle in her extremities. So let's say the toes and the hands are usually the ones that are the most active when we come through her body. So once again, it would not be, let's say, something done voluntarily in our part. It will be just consequences of our energy entering her body.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Mhm.
I feel it's important for me to know what is happening so I can take care of her in the best
Yeah,
way.
of course. At this point right now, you don't have to worry about Emily's body. It is fine. It is well rested. And if you see some tensions or movements, just know it just our energy moving through her body. But we are making sure this is not harmful for her.
Okay. Wonderful. You mentioned earlier that the balance, let's say, between being immersed in the human experience and remembering who we really are
Yeah.
has shifted. And that's why the remembering is supported at this time.
Yeah.
And with this, I think we have a beautiful bridge into the second overall question, which was what led to the distortion of that vision and therefore to the disbalancing of the two aspects.
Yes. Well, we believe that once you are playing an experience that is very based on materialistic stuff, that is very based on power, if we can use that word, that is very based on basically, the food chain, like the primitive sense of life on Earth, it
Mhm.
is clearly a sense of power, a sense of supremacy, a sense of the human needs to be on top. The humans needs to have access to everything. The humans needs to be in control. So this is part of the experience here. And at one point, if all the players are so immersed in it, but have to interact with each other, you could see, and with the environment, we could see the picture coming where it's darkened a little bit because it will become more of a power chase or more of a let's be on top. Let's make sure that I am the player that is going to win this thing. Let's make sure that I am the last of the food chain. Let's make sure that I have access to everything I want and everyone I want. So, in this regard, if every player has become so immersed in it that there is a complete disconnection with everything that is spiritual or that is inner knowledge of a bigger existence, but is being played with that instinct of survival, it could become very destructive for the humans and also for the environment. And this was not intended to be like this. This is something that maybe when this game was designed was not fully understood on part of, let's say, our end, even if we were not part of designer. But when we say our end, meaning non-human or not in the body, and
Non-physical.
yeah, thank you. Exactly, non-physical. So let's say the non-physical part may be underestimated what it would mean to be playing a game that is based on materialistic, on tangible stuff, on instinct, on food chain system, on primitive relation, all this stuff that has been clearly designed for because our intention or our vision also involved non-physical. We did not clearly expect that this will be such a mess, if we could use as word. because it clearly was. And as amazing as it could be to watch, and as interesting as it could be to witness, it clearly is a mess. If you cut the soul from its essence, so from being a soul, non physical, and you immerse it in a word that is designed to be really about what you see, what you can touch, what you can smell, what you can taste, that is really based on physical senses, and that you add like a primitive instinct and a hierarchy of things, like a hierarchy of power somehow, then the more immersed the player is, the more greedy it's going to be with power to hold. And you could see how it can escalate very far and very fast and in a very dark direction. So at one point, there is a choice to be made because we clearly cannot interfere without being asked to because of the rule that was established. But also, since the non-physical created this world, the goal is not to explode this creation. The goal is to keep on using it, to keep on experiencing through it. So at one point, when it is known and seen that the Earthian playtime is in danger itself because its players, or at least some of its players, if not most of its players, are so deeply involved in the play game that they are fully embracing its codes in terms of power, hierarchy, everything that is, tasted, smelled, or yada, yada, yada. Um, then it becomes a problem, and we are left with two options: let it be, and that means accepting that it could come on full on destruction and that we will be no longer able to come experience through this playtime that took a lot of time to be created and a lot of energy. The other option will be to reopen the part of the players so they can somehow awaken, quote marks, of course, and remember that there is more and that this is just a playtime, so they can somehow reconnect to not only the hierarchy, the power, or the sensorial parts, but to all the codes that have been put and written in their surrounding, written in each other's, written in everything that is making Earth, but that is not actually seen if you are not able to use other aspects of yourself than the senses, than the drive, than the power, than the, I would like to say food chain, because we can really not explain it differently, but it's basically the need to be on top, the need to make sure that you are on top, that your family, everything, your surrounding is exactly the way you want it, and you are the one playing, so you really need to focus on yourself in order to avoid the distraction, the complete distraction. We can emphasize also the way of grasping all the codes that are here, that are part of the remembering, that are here to help you remember, that are here to help you reconnect with this inner knowledge, with this inner you that is a little bigger, a lot bigger actually, but let's say a little bigger than the player you think you are. Does that make sense?
Does.
Yes. So right now we feel like there is a need to reopen the connection, just because on top of it, your earth is shifting, this creation has been made of so many living species. It's not just the human and the animals. It's not just the plants. It's not just the mineral. It's also the planet itself is a living species. So we have to consider all aspects of this Earthian playtime. This is why it's so complex playtime, that it goes beyond what a human can comprehend. But the planet Earth is also evolving. And because every player depend on this planet, because it's actually the place where this playtime is taking place, it has somehow to follow this evolution. All the players located on Earth for this playtime, if they want to keep on playing, they need to somehow adjust and go with the flow of the Earth. If they keep on going against, they would no longer be able to stay on it. If they want to be able to keep experiencing, they need a way to follow the evolution of the planet itself. But if they are so stuck into their human experience that they don't recognize that the planet itself is an entity, is a being, they will not be able to evolve with her because they won't be able to notice that it's evolving. So this is why somehow we had to help humans reconnect with this aspect that is part of the game, but from a further end. It's not located on Earth. That this aspect of them being more than just what they think they are, of everything being more than just what they think it is, in order to trigger what you call an awakening, or what we like to call a remembering. So they can follow this evolution and this playtime can keep on existing, because that's what everybody is wanting, for this experience to keep on being. So we can keep on experiencing through it. Being distracted will not be helping anybody, not the ones living in and not the ones watching it. So we really, really want we really want this to be able to continue existing. But in order to do so, we had to, like we said before, make a choice. Since option one was distraction, and we would not want that. Option two was, let's reopen a little bit so people can start realizing there is more, and maybe it could ease the tension. Maybe it could ease the game. Just let it be a game and not being such about power, such about food chain, such about materialistic, such about the darkness turn that it was, getting on.
This is no criticism, but from my position, it seems as if the striving for power and greed, with maybe the first intention to secure the survival of yourself and your family, or your tribe, your community, is something to be expected.
Yes,
So this was already calculated into the game.
it was. It was just not seeing the full impact of it. It was calculated, but it was calculated from a point of view where we do remember. Like we said before, in order for us to not remember, we have to be human. So it was calculated, but still calculated with the universal aspect. We were lacking the human aspect of it, if that can be said.
Yes. You mentioned earlier that there have been attempts before, or
Yeah.
times before, when the non-physical tried to bring this back into balance on Earth. Can you speak a bit more about those times and what the contexts were?
Yes. Well, there was some ancient civilization that were already embodying humans, before your time, before what the historians place as the beginning of humans. There were several civilizations already there, and they were actually still connected somehow. They had way more abilities. They brought way more than the humans brought with them from the other side. Let's say we did not tied up the end as much as we did for the humans. But even with still having, a little more of that connection, the game of that we said before, power, experiencing that freedom of choice, experiencing, you know, the thrive, the experiencing, the survival instinct, all this stuff was already there. So the way they went about it escalated to, again, some momentum that were not able to be endured by the earth itself, or that were not to be endured because it was bringing the entire playtime into dangerous zone, and we could not let the creation be completely destroyed. So somehow it had to be regulated, if that makes sense.
Right. And what measures were taken?
Well, it would depend. Some completely departed. Some civilization just completely departed, completely vanished, completely were brought back to the other side because they could not handle being in this playtime anymore. I mean, they just completely wrecked the place. So we had to take them as a whole. And some other civilization, they've been given choices. It's either you keep on doing what you're doing and you're not going to be able to keep on playing and you're going to come back home, or you decide that you're ready to adjust and you can keep on experiencing this playtime, but in a different way.
Right. Are any of the players that are incarnated at this time also ones that have had experiences in those other civilizations you're talking
Yeah.
about?
Yes,
Hmm.
completely. Probably more than we think.
Right. Is this a fully internal dilemma when it comes to humanity on Earth, or have there been outside influences playing a part in this as well? I assume that as humans on Earth, we don't exist in a vacuum. So is this something you could talk about?
Yes. Are you talking about your species being the only one experiencing influences, or other species on other planets or on other systems are experiencing it as well? Is that the question?
Let me rephrase. Is the development in the direction of greed and power struggles and all that, has this been influenced in some way by
Others. Yes.
not on Earth or from Earth?
Yes. Let's say Earthen playtimes is really appealing to the universe, right? Because of its uniqueness, because of its complexity, and because of the veil. It's really, 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 really drawing souls in. It could be drawing souls from different levels, drawing souls from different areas of the universe, let's say. So, yes, in that sense, like, we are a collective that can influence by coming talking to you. There are others and other collectives that could influence as well, either by coming talking, either by transmitting, either by fully incarnating and living on Earth. So, in that sense, yes, you could have many different influences coming into this playtime, because you could also have many way of looking at this playtime. Some may fully want this playtime to, be about the playtime and let it play completely without interfering, just completely about the greed and the power, and let's see where this darkness leads. That could be of interest. And some other would be more in the protective aspect of it and would be like, whoa, 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 no, this is way too dangerous. We're surfing with the edge. Let's make sure that this does not implode and that we can protect our creation. So you could have completely different vision about this playtime, and all are accepted. We do not have the correct vision. We just have our proper vision because we are made of, let's say, an energy and a frequency and an aspect that would be drawn to saving and protecting our creation. But some other aspect of the one could be made about No, we created something, let it be played on its own, let it be played fully. Let's see where all of this go. Let's go in completely as dark as it can go. Let's go. So they are not right or wrong either. It's just their preference regarding this playtime. And in the same way, we are interfering, connecting, and opening some channel. The same way they are allowed to interfere, connect, and open channels as well.
Right. So the groups are basically working against each other's interests or intentions.
Basically, this is also why it's so interesting. The entire universe is based on different perspectives, even if we are one, depending on the level of your energy, you are able to fully englobe all aspects, or you are able to choose some aspect that you want to keep of your interests, let's say. But you do acknowledge that the other aspect can exist. It's just you choose to not fight for it. Oh, we are a collective that choose to fight for the light. We choose to fight for what we call the bright side of the universe. But you can have different groups that are neutral. You can have different groups that are global, different groups that are choosing the dark side of things. And we do not say that one is prevailing. We do not say that one is better than the other. We just choose to embrace the bright side. The other groups that embrace the dark side, they will have a different perspective on things. It doesn't mean they are wrong. It just means it's not our cup of tea, you know. But like we said before, one cannot really exist without the other. It's just a terms of balancing everything. And sometimes one group go too far. Maybe they would think that we go too far at this time because we're interfering more and more. But maybe we would say they are going too far as well because they are interfering more and more too. So let's say it's very hard to put a judgment as there is none. It's just a preference of choosing aspect of the universe that is more matching our own energy, if that makes sense.
Right. It does.
We
It
are
does.
all existing as one anyway. So
Right.
that means the part of the group influencing in the darker areas needs to be in order for us to be as well,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Could it be stated, therefore, that those playing for the darkness, if that makes sense to say, um, that they're also playing a game of forgetting in some way?
Somehow they are, somehow, or they are choosing not to forget, but they are choosing to embrace the aspect. What would it be like if we were going full on power game, greed game, with full on ruler, with full on services to self instead of services to one as a huge collective? So it could be interpreted multiple ways. You could look at it and say, oh, yeah, this is definitely some darkness going into, stuff that are against or stuff that are forgetting where they come from. Or it could be choices made with full conscious of who they are, where they come from. They're just deciding to embracing this aspect of self, which is part of the one anyway.
Yeah.
It's just, we believe that when you are playing for the bright side of things, you're more englobing, you're more selfless because you are taking everything in consideration, including the darkness. When you are playing on the dark side, you tend to be a little more specific, a little more centered, a little more oriented on what you choose to take in consideration, if that makes sense.
Right. Is it appropriate to talk about such topics? I'm personally very interested in what's happening behind the stage, so to speak. But if you prefer to keep the focus on the human experience, just let me know and I will focus on it as well.
We could talk about pretty much everything you want. We do believe, though, that for the project itself, the human will be already very complicated to transmit. But it doesn't mean that in our conversation, we cannot talk about everything. We could completely have conversation about subject or topics that are of your liking. It doesn't mean it has to be included in your project.
Mhm.
It could be just for you to converse. Private conversations with us are too, you know?
Right.
So it clearly is up to you. Whatever you want to talk about, we can. But if it was a question about whatever we are wanting to translate, to transmit in your language to the people to help them, maybe, then the human complexity would be already enough because we are actually hoping that this could be put into words and that everybody could grasp the idea of how deep is the human aspect. But for everything else, Mario, you can be freely speaking and asking all the questions that you would like to ask. If we can answer them all, then we will. If there are some questions that are inappropriate for us to answer, then
Mhm.
we will let you know without hesitation.
Okay. Wonderful. That's good to know. So I will probably ask you questions in the future off the record, so to speak.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. And I will probably not include them in the material that's
Oh,
focused on the human experience. Right. To bring this focus back to humanity and Earth, um, the context you've just given of the different forces that are very interested in our experience here
yeah,
creates an image of humanity being a very easy, I don't want to say victim, but someone with amnesia who is put into a room and he's being talked to but from two different sides. You
yeah,
know, the image I'm trying to create here, it's like being a ball in like a tennis game.
yes. This is why at first it was supposed to not be no interference. The human is left with its human aspect to deal with. But when you enter that game, the game itself is rigged a little bit somehow because, like we said before, as you incarnate, you forget because that's the experience you are choosing to play. But you cannot erase what you are in the first place. So
Right.
even if a veil is being put, you cannot completely 100% erase the fact that you know you are more. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yes, and we all agree to say that this is what is spectacularly interesting to us because the very, very, very first move of this game is already, how you say that, unstable because in its concept, there is already a duality. You want someone to forget completely who they are, but because they are existing as who they are, therefore they cannot completely forget who they are. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yes. So you could see why this is an amazing playtime to us. It is incredibly complex in its aspect. It has so many layers that are so interesting. But yes, in the first place, it was intended that no interference were allowed, just the soul having the human experience being played, the soul returning to the other end, and then sharing the experience. Even if we are watching it, it could share its experience from their point of view because they lived it. We are just watching it.
Thank you so much. So we have covered the first two of the three questions.
Okay.
I have a feeling that the third one is a very big one. The question was, how can we realign with the original vision
Oh,
and get back on track? So
yes.
maybe it would be more appropriate to start with that in the next working.
Yes. And we believe that maybe before we are able to answer that question, if we are able to fully answer that question, because, so many layers, so
Yes.
many, yeah, so many side of that answer actually. So perhaps before we could fully answer that question, we will go by step. Let's say, how can a human fully align? Then some concept will be needed to establish and will be needed to be understand fully before we could go on and give, how you call that, tips on how to improve your alignment.
Are these specific concepts that we will uncover as we go, so to speak, or do you already want me to write them down?
We're not sure. We're not sure what will be the best way to go about it. Well, the first concept you could actually see is the one we talked about before, being a player, but knowing that you're more than a player. That's step one, to fully understand.
Yeah.
Then concept number two, understand that the player itself has different players within him, meaning the physical body, which is made of, the organs, the fluids, the envelope, all of the senses, all of it. But then it has the emotional body, then it has the etherical body, and, all those stuff that can go on and on and on. So this is concept number two, because to answer properly your question, how to realign, one needs to understand its own complexity before, because you cannot realign just from the physical, you cannot realign just from the emotional. You have to understand that everything is linked. You have to know how many layers, if you can know how many layers you're made of. And then you have to understand that one player is also influenced by the surrounding of the, let's say, non-human aspect. So all its environment, whether it's nature, whether it's object, whether it's construction or whatever, but the environment of that human. And also it has to take in consideration his connection, his or her connections to other humans, because the players is also influenced by the other players. So in terms of alignment, it's very complex to fully answer that question, because we need to tackle all the different aspects there is in one player.
Right.
And those aspects themselves can be infinite almost. So we could definitely answer partially that question, but it will also be completely different from one individual to the other. So we have doubts that we can completely satisfy that question. We could try to get as close as possible to answer it properly, but we are expressing reservation on, can we 100% answer it?
I see. I'm perfectly fine with diving into the basic concepts first.
Okay.
Totally. And while you were speaking about the complexities and different layers of a player, I noticed how there is the word layer in player,
Yes, it is right.
which was
See,
funny.
we did not even we did not even make that connection. Player layer. Yes. So there it is. Your answer was in the word to start with, because player, PL, is like the abbreviation for plural too.
Right.
So, like somehow words are spelled, as we like to say, but
Right.
layers, yeah, this is plural layers. It's very interesting, but it is actually very important. We believe that this is the most misunderstood aspect of the humans. Humans, as a general, if you ask a human how complex they are and how connected they are, they will answer partially. They would not fully understand how many layers they are composed of. And this is for us the main issue where everything started. This is really something that has to be dissected in order for one to be able to fully receive, integrate, and digest any further transmission. This is a concept that really needs to be cleared.
Wonderful. I'm excited to do that with you.
Yes, we are too.
All right. That gives us an outline for the next working or workings. And with this, I would like to ask you whether there's anything about the original plan and about what led to the distortion of this plan that we have not covered today that you would like to add.
Well, let's say the original plan and the distraction is actually quite normal somehow, you know. We believe that since there is a freedom of choice, there was not one outcome that was more right than another. It was just an outcome. It's unfortunate from our perception, our perspective, that it led to this, but it's not a wrong answer. Game was intended to exist on its own, meaning it was also intended to evolve on its own, meaning it was intended to have freedom of evolution, whether it's one way or another. Sometimes destruction is the outcome of an evolution. It's unfortunate from a perspective, but it's also acceptable and normal from another. Do you know what we mean?
Yes.
So let's say what could be done now is maybe add the fact that each player understand a little more about themselves, because that's probably, in our point of view, what the game was lacking. You've been put to play as a player in a playtime with some rules and regulations, but the one thing that was not fully given to you is a complete understanding of what a player is. And this may be a key to help evolving in a new direction.
Excellent. All right. I also just added another aspect that we might be able to explore in the future.
Yeah,
The rules of the game.
yeah, very
Since,
interesting.
since we are players in it, it would be nice to know what exactly
Yeah.
the rules are.
Yes, that would be a good, that would be a whole conversation probably.
Yes. Okay.
But well, or maybe it could be sum up. We're trying to think because the rules evolve also with the game. The rules to start with might be a simple list, but the rules that you are playing with now might be a different story.
Okay. Let's give this a whole conversation
Okay.
at another time. If it's all right with you, there are a few questions I would like to ask off record.
Yes, go for it.
This will help me as well put this all into perspective and into the context of my own understanding. You talked about the different factions, so to speak, the teams. Would it be correct to associate the bright side, I think you said, and the dark side? Would it be correct to associate them with the positive polarization and the negative?
It would if you're based on our point of view, because in our perspective, the bright side is definitely the positive side of it. But we are not sure that if you were getting transmission from the collective of, let's say, the dark side, you would get the same answer. Because probably if being asked, the dark side will be, no, the positive is from our side.
Okay. So they would not feel right about calling themselves negative.
They would not necessarily feel that. They would probably feel that we are the negative because we are not understanding what they are trying to accomplish.
Right. Okay. I thought
But,
that,
but you are clearly playing from our team. So let's say, for a general speaking of the human definition of positive and negative, you could say that we are the positive aspect of it. Because in human language, it's understood this way, that if you do good, if you are trying to spread love and understanding and seeing existence on a bigger level, that you are a positive being. It is known that if you are playing from a more centered place, from a more selfish place, from a more powerful driven, then you are more on the negative side. So the answer to your question in the human language will be yes, you could say that. But in a metaphysical, we are not sure that this applies because every aspect of the universe, every aspect of the energy that is made of different energy that creates a one big energy. Well, let's say all those energies will believe they are acting in their rightful way. So if you ask an energy that is based on destruction, the positive side for them will be destructing. If you're asking a constructive energy, the positive side will be construction. So it really depends on who you are talking with. Does that make sense?
it does a lot.
Perspective is completely unique in function of who you have in front of you, quote mark, of course.
Right. Could the two terms also be used in a more objective way, the way we use positive and negative, for example, in the context of electricity, without evaluation of quality?
See what you're talking about. Yes, it could. It could be positive and negative in the way electricity works. But in that sense, you could actually probably invert. So you could have it both ways.
Hmm,
We would
okay.
think that we could be the positive side and the negative side the negative, but we could also go the reverse way, where we could be the negative and they could be the positive.
Right. So it would make more sense, or it would be more easy to understand if we use service to self and service to others.
Yes. For us, at least, for our perspective and our um, point of view, per se, this will be more accurate to use service of others and service of self. And it's not really service of others, it's service of wholeness, service of oneness versus service of self.
Okay. Very good.
This will clearly distinguish the team that is in front of you, for sure.
Okay. Okay, wonderful. And the other question was, in the Law of One, Ra speaks about a certain rhythm or cycles of evolution that we are a part of as souls, as a species, and also as a planet, as you mentioned before. The planet is also evolving. Is this what you were referring to, that we are going through these different densities, so to speak, of experience?
Definitely.
So you can confirm this concept
Yes.
of the different levels.
Yes. We are fully in agreement with this concept.
And when you said that Earth itself or herself is going from one layer to the next, evolving in that way, that would mean that she's also at the end of a cycle. Planet.
Yes, correct. She's already starting the new cycle.
Right. And this is probably where the concept of the new Earth comes into play, correct?
Probably. Yeah, you could say it because it will be logical semantically. Like if you call it the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle that is applied to a planet called Earth, then it will be accurate to call it a new Earth.
Right. In the Law of One material, Ra states that there will be some humans that will go to the next level together with the planet and others who will not, and
Yeah.
they will have to repeat the third density experience, another cycle.
Yes.
Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah. Well, we believe we touched a little bit of that. Basically, the humans are living on the planet, right? So if the planet itself is shifting, then humans need to follow the shift. If they don't follow, if they cannot adjust to the shift, they will no longer be able to subsist on this planet. It's very logical. So the ones who are able to transmute with the planet, to evolve with the planet, will be granted the continuity of their playtime with this planet, of course. But for the ones that will not be able to make that change and evolve and maintain themselves in harmony with the planet and will not be able to keep on playing with this planet, they will simply find another playtime. If they needed to finish their lessons or finish their experience or finish what they were coming to learn, quote marks. So in that sense, they would repeat their experience, but it would certainly not be with the same planet because if the Earth shifts, like you said, it becomes a new Earth, the older planet no longer exists. So they would not be able to repeat the experience on the older planet. They will have to find a similar planet or a similar playtime that would grant them the same kind of energy so they could keep on experiencing 3D if it was 3D or other stuff they were trying to fulfill and trying to learn and grow to, but it would not be able to be on a new Earth.
Right. In the raw material, the core aspect that defines whether a soul moves on into the next density or needs to repeat a cycle is the choice of polarization at the end
Mm.
of the cycle. This is not very well known to my surprise, which makes me wonder whether this is correct information. Can you speak about this or confirm
We
this?
and it might surprise you, but we are not completely in agreement with that because from the simple fact that both polarization could actually evolve, right? So you can have the Earth evolving, becoming the new Earth, and some humans living on this Earth evolving as well. Those humans can choose to evolve one way or another.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
may I interfere? I don't want to state it in the wrong way. The choice of polarization does not mean I move on or I have to repeat. It's more about if you choose a polarization, no matter which one, you move on. But if you
Oh,
don't choose a polarization and stay neutral, you need to repeat. Sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, this is more clear. Well, in that case, this is a very interesting concept. The neutral parts, do they intend it as if you stay neutral, meaning you are not choosing anything for yourself? Or,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so it's not neutral as you admit that both exist and you are okay with having both existing. It's just like you are unsure and unable to be choosing for yourself.
Yes,
Correct.
exactly. Because you might not know that choosing a polarization is actually required.
Correct. And in this way, we are in agreement because it would mean that consciously, the human will not have reached the level of being able to consciously grasp the concept of polarization. Because if you are neutral in the sense that you are unable to choose for yourself or you're unable to move further with those concepts and not neutral because you accept that both exist and you are fine with both, is completely different. That means one consciously has not grown to the point that they can define polarization, they can understand, they can integrate and digest those concepts. Therefore, they are not ready to evolve at the same rhythm as the planet. Therefore, they will not be able to move on. But if in another case that is neutral, where you are completely aware what polarization is, you are completely aware there is the positive and negative, you choose to accept both existence and you choose to embrace both, because you could. There are some neutral group out here. Then it's different, because consciously, that means you are evolving. That means you are able to maintain yourself with this planet. So it's completely different. So we would be in agreement if the neutral part would be we are not able to choose for ourselves or understand those concepts, then yes, because that means your frequency would be stagnant. It would not be rising enough to make the shift, quote marks.
Right. Well, thank you for clarifying, because these questions and these concepts are quite profound to me, because they kind of shape the way I see the world. And I have always been surprised by the fact that a body of material that rings so authentic and true to me puts so much importance on an aspect that I don't really see repeated or mentioned so often in other materials. And I wonder why that is.
Yes, well, you could have different answer to that. Maybe the question was not asked. Maybe the groups that was transmitting, it was not a priority for them to speak on this aspect, or maybe simply they did not have access to that knowledge. So it could be why some of the stuff found in some transmission don't repeat. But this is a good thing that you ask questions, because if nobody asks questions, then those concepts will be unrepeated. But if you do ask questions, then maybe you'll have some knowledge on it. And for us, even if we are familiar with the raw material, because we are familiar with the group that came and transmitted,
Mhm.
the polarization, the neutral aspect, we needed to make sure of the frame of reference, just to make sure we had the correct definition of it and the correct
Yes.
intention in a statement.
Yes.
Because we do accept neutral regarding
Mhm.
polarization, and we do accept that neutral could move on, but it would be, like we said before, the aspect of a neutral that fully consciously understand, digest, integrate the concept of polarization, but just choose to englobe it as a whole and
Mhm.
not just one side or the other. Just accept that both exist, that both are complementary, and that it stays neutral in a sense that it goes with both. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yes. So two different things.
So you could say there are three paths
Yes.
into the next level of evolution.
Yes. Yes. We are in alignment with that three path, just because you could see, okay, let's try to put it in a very concrete expression. You have a saying that is a story about the glass being half full, half empty, right? But there is a third way to see this. It's just glass and water. You see? Yes. So half empty, half full, or it's just glass and water.
Right. Intuitively, I would think that this third group, the neutral group, would be a rather small one compared to the others.
Probably. It will be a rather small one, and it will be, in our perspective, one that tends to vibrate a little higher,
Higher compared to?
higher compared to the two other groups,
Okay.
just
Very.
because they are closer to oneness, in a sense that they can englobe and accept every part of being, of existence, just the way it is, and not consider one way or the other, but rather embrace both ways, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
We are not part of that group. We are part of, like we said before, the group that sees the glass half.
Right.
You are part of that group as well, we believe. But the neutral part, like we said, could be a smaller group, but it would definitely be an interested group because the perspective will be probably more global and closer to source.
I believe I can sense what you mean, what you're talking about.
Good. It is hard. Words are very hard for us to use, especially because English is not Emily's first language. So we are very limited in the choice of her vocabulary. We are trying to convey some difficult concepts to grasp in the first place, but with words, it kind of make it even harder for us to transmit them. So don't hesitate if you feel there is other wording that would express the concept better or that would make it clearer. You are free to reformulate and we could attest if it's what we intended to say.
All right. I will. Thank you. I think you're doing an excellent job.
Well, thank
And
you.
and I'm grateful that you're doing this in English because my French would no way be
Yeah.
good enough to do this in her native language. All right. I think those were my questions off the record. Thank you for introducing this new aspect of the neutral group. This is quite profound and makes a lot of sense to me.
We are glad.
Okay, I think that's it for today. We've worked for 2 hours. I think Emily would appreciate being able to come back.
Okay. Sounds good to us.
All right, then thank you for the outline, and
And
I will prepare the next working so we can dive into the complexities and the layers that you mentioned.
okay. Sounds good.
All right. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close the journey?
Well, not much, except we are always pleased and we are always very happy and thankful to come and transmit with you guys. This is such a pleasure.
Likewise. All right. Thank you, Rufus. And of course, thank you to all the other beings that have been with us here today. With much love and deep gratitude, we're asking all energies and beings to recede to where they belong.